welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. Anything and everything that matters to you, we cover it right here on the show. I'm Sananda Jaiseelan. On the show tonight, we bring in expert voice from the tech industry, talking about all things technology, talking about what perhaps the next couple of months are looking like, talking about work from home, all of those questions. I'm in conversation with Vivek Sharma. He's the MD India at Lenovo ISG. Vivek, good having you here on the show 2020-21. What has it been like for you personally and professionally? What could you tell us?
Well, the simplest answer to that is we've never seen something like this before. Overnight, everything from a professional perspective at least changed. You can't go to the office. People discovered that the data center and the disaster recovery plans that they had in place uh, didn't factor the lockdowns across a country, across cities, across nations. So we all had to learn and unlearn on what we would do overall. So I think from a professional perspective, the learning was uh, how teams came together. You had to learn and unlearn. You had to unlearn what how you used to work, and you had to learn a new way of working. See, some of the models were already in place. It is not that you couldn't work from home earlier. People did used to do that, but doing it uh, constantly, week by week, for months together, is a big change from doing it for a day or a couple of days in a month overall. So the learning was how to strike a balance between the personal and professional. So my learning, and I implemented it very early in the lockdown itself. You cut down on your commute time, use it to do a bit more of maybe an exercise workout, and start office like you used to do earlier. Carve out a space for it and have a work life balance in the sense, because it's easier to go in the flow, and these calls can go for ever. So you have to have a start time, you have to have a close time, and you have to have a switch time. So that was the balance that had to come overall. I think the second part was people always surprise you. So it was extremely, good to see and heartening on how teams came together, to handle this and then put this in perspective as, they also got used to a new working model.
You were talking about unlearning, relearning, and really the striking of the balance between the two. What have been the learnings from the first and the second wave, Vivek, and possibly if you're staring at the third wave, you'll be able to carry some of those learnings forward?
See, some of the learnings actually, so let me break it up into two parts. One is the first is the learnings which are actually across. I mean, I wouldn't say that they apply to SMBs, they will apply to large enterprises too. Uh, uh, in the sense, because see, as it hit, there were some organizations which were ready for it, were more resilient overall, and there were, a set which had to scramble and figure out what to do and how to do it fast overall. But I think the first learning that comes across and has now sunk in, pretty much, that technology is no longer an enabler. Technology today runs your business. It has become a competitive differentiator between you and your peers in the industry overall. And I think that will apply across, whether it is SMB or large enterprises. So the role of technology has come to the forefront as the pandemic unfolded across the globe overall, and this would apply to enterprises and SMBs across the globe. Yeah. So that was the first one. The second is it also maybe put it in perspective on how quickly some of the processes needed to be changed and were changed overall. And this would also apply both in SMB and in enterprise customers. Because if you had to work cannot stop. Your suddenly your workforce has to work from home, and your processor are aligned to be where people at a certain place and at a certain desk overall. So I think that was the second learning, that the processes can be changed and that can be changed fast and adopted overall. I think from an SMB perspective, the big difference that may have been between SMB and large enterprises is the readiness from work from home. Because the SMBs may have had a more propensity of people coming to office every day compared to large enterprises and corporations. So this must have been and may have been completely 360-degree change on what was needed overall. So that would have been, I think, from an SMB perspective, the biggest impact. And from whatever I saw, people did react fast to it. Some of them went to the cloud immediately. Uh, Endpoint devices to be given to the workforce overall, to do. But the learning would have been were the applications and how your systems are geared up, for people to work from home. This thing.
We are possibly staring at a third wave, and one thing that we've been speaking about all throughout the first wave and the second wave so far has been business resilience. What lessons in business resilience have we learned? What can we take forward?
See, as the third wave approaches, I think at least in India context, the second wave took everybody by surprise. Just the intensity of it overall, and everybody found that it was hitting uh, much more closer this time around. So everybody that you talk to, at least for that 45-60 degree period, it was tough, very very tough overall. But from a business perspective, I think people had already, businesses had already started putting solutions in place. Like the first wave did tell, as and that is extended, because it is not that the businesses couldn't see the second or a third wave not happening globally overall. So I think they did put it in place. Like the decision, if we move to cloud, cannot be a perpetual one, maybe. So you'll have to find a balance between what you needed to put on your core and what would you put on the cloud. Cloud can be expensive in the long run overall. So I think they had already started working on this and are working on this overall. I think the other trend was that digital transformation, and this will mean different thing to different people depending on the industry you are in. But if you take it at a brass tack, it is relining of decision making, and customer relations using digital platforms and tools, and a lot more collaboration platforms. So I think from a perspective of readiness of third wave, organizations which have already done it have tweaked the systems and found a balance between them would be better prepared. And I think, going by the intensity of what people saw, the acceleration for this in the remaining segments would accelerate. So technology adoption and the transformation, will get a further acceleration and boost over and above what it already had from the pandemic.
Vivek, I have to take a quick commercial break on that note. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, I'm in conversation with Lenovo to talk all things technology. Is work from home here to stay? I know the tech industry largely moved towards this model, but for other industries, is that a trend that is definitely here to stay?
Actually, see, work from home is the most visible outcome of the pandemic. When we talk of technology and what has been put in, because it's there and it affects all of us. So work from home, therefore becomes the single point of discussions, and naturally, like what you asked. So I feel, work from home would be a hybrid environment. uh, I I don't lean too much towards the right or left on this, because I don't think organizations will go for a completely work from home environment, or a complete work from office anyway. So the workplace has changed for good. It would be a hybrid environment. And I think from an employee's perspective also, I don't think employees would also want, either of the two. They would want a, hybrid model. It'll also depend on, the diversity in your organization, because it would mean different things to different people. But organizations would have to strike a balance between work from home and work from office. So, that hybrid model will have to keep a couple of things in mind. Uh, because see, when you work from office, and people are discovering this, there is a value to the social interaction that brings to it. There are, great ideas which come when you're face to face. From a cultural perspective for organizations, especially for the new joinees, if they don't come to office at all, how do you put that in place overall? And of course, it also be from a diversity perspective. Um, and when I say that, I'm coming from an employee point of view. Take young working couples with younger children, uh, with large compute times overall. They would want the flexibility from work from home. The flip side of that is, people who are ready to come to office constantly. How would you balance their needs, their progress? On how would you look at that? So I think it'll be a balance that organizations will have to find, and it will vary from, uh, you know, industry to industry and vertical to vertical overall, because there are some works which need to you to be in office. There are some works which can be done remotely overall, but ultimately it'll be a mix for majority. So it'll be a hybrid work culture, and the workplace will change, or has already changed because of it overall. And see, so that's the working part of it. The second thing that you have to keep on in mind on this is the mental well-being and health of employees. And that's been very, very relevant for the last 18 months or so as this has unfolded. But as things will go back to a new normal and a new way of working, that balance will also have to be found on what comes. The solutions, from a technology perspective, are always available. uh, I think so. One thing that the pandemic did do is, bust some of the myths that, work from home is maybe not as productive. Productivity will suffer. Will people give as much as they're supposed to if they're coming to office? So I think that, busting of those myths help, uh, and that will accelerate it to the hybrid work environment of the future.
NASCOM, I know, has been pushing for work from home tax breaks. For those who are employing this model for businesses, for employees. But we haven't really heard much on that, Vivek. Any comments that you can offer us on that?
See, like I mentioned, we just discussed in the first part when I answered you, more from a perspective of, the balance, between the two. But, there is a complete cycle to it, and it will affect a lot of other things, within the organization. So, like, benefits of, if you're working from home, what are the tax benefits that you could, give? And that's from a government perspective. Overall, what shape they will take is difficult to say. Because that was the early part of it. Overall, now as the vaccination drives have started, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. you would come back to a new normal. But it's not only from a government perspective. Even companies will look at it, isn't it? Um, Recently there was this, big news of a large corporation CEO saying that people should come back to work, and this was in the US overall by September. Uh, because if you can go to a restaurant, you can come to a office, but that was in a different context. But this will affect also. Suppose you're living in a city and your salaries are based on where you are. There's a cost of living and things like that. And if there is a complete model of you can work from anywhere, I think those things will also change. So it's going to be a set of things that will have to come together, issues, which would be from a perspective of tax breaks is just one of them. It would be also how you're paid, what are the facilities available, uh, a complete, I think, combination of various parameters like this, on an overall basis. It's not only from a tax based perspective. This has an impact on,
Sure.
I think, the policies and processes also, across organizations.
I want to read out some data here, Vivek. Before the start of the pandemic, we had about 7.5% of the total population being constituted by women employees. That has slipped further during the pandemic to about 5.4%. Is work from home pushing more women out of the workplace rather than perhaps giving them the flexibility of being able to continue working? What's your view?
Absolutely, I don't see any reason why not, because it gives the flexibility, of it gives them the flexibility of choosing work hours, and the organizations will have to find a balance for this, overall. So it definitely will impact, overall. So it will increase the workforce in that sense. That's what I personally believe, overall. It will also have to find a balance, like what I was telling you earlier, from a perspective of finding a balance, on how the organizations will look at it. See, look at it simply. Uh, Young men may be able to come to office, or may be willing to come to office every day. Young couples who have younger children, what I mentioned earlier, and this came out recently in an HBR study. Overall, they may not be, but people who come to office every day, will that get more advantage than people who don't? So those are the balances that would have to be found. There is no, I think, a clear answer or solution on this right now. It will evolve as workplace involved. But I think the other thing that I mentioned to you, what has happened is that the myth that working from home is not productive, or you would not get the best out of an employee, because there may have been a trust factor, of people's availability and things like. I think that has got busted overall, which would be an accelerator, uh, for uh, the workforce to expand specifically from a diversity perspective.
The importance of automation, and we constantly talk about data security and automation, and really how the two go hand in hand. I want to get your views on that.
See, innovations, what I said, will also come across, because a lot of adoption that you are seeing is already present. Work from home is not a solution that this pandemic created. It was already there. All that was already in place
Correct.
overall. But what would happen is, will come in the areas of more and more automation.
Correct.
On Data is already there. So how will you analyze it, and how would you quickly turn into a meaningful, uh, you know uh, business objective, to look at, overall. So those are the things, I think, that will get more and more focus and more acceleration, overall. And those innovations, you need to keep an eye on how would you adopt. Don't go by the technology trend. See how it fits into your business needs. It's not necessary if everybody is doing it, I have to do it too, right? So there has to be a marriage between these technology trends and innovations to how it fits into your need overall. uh, because it for sure has accelerated what people call digital transformation, because this joke goes around, who on you're given a choice, one, two, three, who's being the biggest enabler, and they say the pandemic for digital transformation
Correct.
overall. So but it throws new scenarios now, and that adaptability to it, and the understanding that technology is no longer a luxury or a necessity or an enabler. It could be the differentiator between you and your competition.
All right, Vivek. Good chat here on the show. Thanks so much, Vivek. Have a good night. That's all. We go back into this episode. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Our contact details coming up on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.